as Minnesota businesses continue to navigate the many uncertainties caused by the pandemic, including workforce shortages, supply chain snags, and inflation, an additional financial hit may be just around the corner if the legislature does not act. Senator Eric Pratt is chair of the Senate Jobs and Economic Growth Committee, and he joins me to talk more about it. Welcome.
Thank you.
Spoiler alert. The Senate has passed a bill with strong bipartisan support that would pay off the debt and replenish the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, which everybody refers to as the UI Trust Fund. If this isn't done, businesses will see a tax hike. For those not following this closely, how did the fund become so indebted?
Well, the fund became indebted because we had so many claims on the unemployment system. 1 in 5 Minnesotans took advantage, used unemployment to help support themselves while they were laid off. This pandemic and the recession and the layoffs that came with it hit working people harder than even the Great Recession of 2008, 2009. At that point, there was a drain on the system. We were about $700 million in debt. This time we were down to about $1.4 billion. And it's just simply we had more claims than we've ever had in the past.
And so this bill would then take $2.7 billion to pay off the debt that we have to the federal government, and then also to restore the fund to a positive balance of $1.3 billion. Where is this $2.7 billion coming from?
Well, we've got 2.3 coming from leftover federal money, CARES Act and American Rescue Plan, or what we call ARPA. And then we do have to supplement it with about $400 million of surplus money. There's really two components, as you mentioned. One, we have about 1.2 or 1.3 billion that we owe in debt to the federal government. We're only one of 10 states that still owes the federal government for unemployment insurance. There's the interest that goes along with that. As of today, we're at about $9 million in interest. And then replenishing the fund, which started at 1.7 billion pre-pandemic, to bring it up to what would be a sustainable level.
So you say 1.3 billion is a sustainable level. Some members of the House DFL have said that the state should just simply pay off the debt and then let the tax on businesses that does replenish the fund replenish it over time. What is the reason to bring it up closer to that pre-pandemic level?
Well, I think there's two reasons. One, Commissioner Grove touched on it when he testified in the House, is that right now we still have a little bit of a run on the unemployment system. And there are seasonal adjustments. Sometimes we collect more money than we pay out, and then other times we pay out more money than we collect. That if we only paid off the debt, we would go back into debt very, very shortly because we're in that seasonal pattern of still paying out more than we take in. We'll expect that to change here in the next few months. So by only paying off the debt, we go back into debt very, very quickly. The second piece is that we made a promise to business owners that we would hold them harmless because many of these workers, hospitality workers in particular, were laid off due to actions by the state. And every dollar that was paid out of the Unemployment Trust Fund went to an unemployed worker to help them pay for groceries, pay for rent, keep their families sustained while they were out of work. And so it doesn't seem fair to me that we would ask business owners to pay that back when we, as the state, in a sense, forced many of them to do that.
If this bill were to become law in its current form, would it then prevent any and all tax increases on businesses? Would basically what they pay in unemployment insurance tax remain as it was before COVID-19?
Yes. The bill not only pays it back to what we call sustainable level. So in statute, we have certain levels that have to be met, and the tax rate adjusts, or the premium rate, because it's an insurance policy, adjusts with how much we have in reserve. And at 1.3 billion, statutorily, we would eliminate all of those increases.
On the Senate floor, you referred to this bill as the moral thing to do. And I think you sort of touched on it, but I want you to say a little bit more, because there was kind of a collective promise to hold businesses harmless. Why is that important?
Well, everybody had to come together, particularly in 2020, when we didn't know much about the virus, to make sure that we kept our healthcare system afloat, that we weren't overburdening it with sick people due to COVID. And while I might disagree with the governor on how he executed that strategy, the fact is that we did. And to have this be the only impact from the pandemic that we tax, and again, businesses didn't benefit from the unemployment system being used, their employees did. And so it doesn't make sense for us then to say, you must lay off your employees in order to keep them financially stable, but now you have to pay a higher premium in order to pay back the system, because the goal here is not just to cut payroll taxes for business, but it's also make sure that the system is there, stable, and reliable in case laid off employees need them in the future.
One other issue that has been mentioned as a potential stumbling block or concern of people on the other side, detractors of this bill, is that it's not fair that all businesses would be held harmless, because some businesses did thrive during the pandemic. Is there any reason why this should be tweaked in such a way that businesses who did well would maybe see a tax hike, and businesses, especially smaller businesses who really need to not have their taxes go up at this time, could be held harmless? Is there any reason why we should divvy those two groups apart?
Well, there's a very good reason, and one is the federal government won't allow us to do it. This is an insurance pool. Think of it like your homeowner's insurance or your car insurance. Everybody's paying in to cover the claims of a future event. Now to say that some people who didn't use the fund now have to pay a higher premium, while people who did take out an insurance claim don't have to pay, seems a little bit backwards. Every business, every employee sacrificed during the pandemic. And I think just us stepping up and making sure that the system is whole and readily available in case we need it again is the right thing to do.
Now, one more thing before we go. Senator Erin Murphy attempted to amend this bill on the floor to include payments of $1,500 to people who continued to go to work in the early days of the pandemic as a result of the Frontline Worker Pay Working Group, which is now stymied. That was a pot of $250 million. Her proposal would cost significantly more, but members of the House DFL also support including payments to frontline workers as maybe part of a deal with the Senate on the UI Trust Fund. Is there a deal to be made there?
Well, let me start off by saying we really appreciate everyone who did work through the pandemic. We had nurses and doctors and firefighters, police officers, childcare workers, grocery store workers, construction workers. A lot of people were still working through the pandemic. In fact, you might say, with 1 in 5 Minnesotans taking advantage of the unemployment system, you can say 4 of 5 were still working in essential jobs. And we do appreciate that, and we set aside $1 million to thank them last session. But this is a bill that's not in competition with that effort. And Senator Housley and Kiffmeyer came up with a plan that spent the money that we were allocated, and the House DFL balked at it. We could have given nurses and healthcare workers $1,200 checks and then come back and talk about what we're doing now. And even the governor has asked for a clean bill. The Senate and over 2/3 of the Senate DFL caucus were in agreement that this should be a clean bill. The governor's in agreement that it should be a clean bill, and I think the House has to get on board and say we're going to pass a clean bill before the March 15th deadline that we have.
Senator Eric Pratt, thank you so much.
Thank you.